First up is Vic Crone. Vic is the Chief Executive of Callaghan Innovation, a very passionate Kiwi and very customer-focused with a leading track record of leading and implementing strategy and building organizations. So Vic's very, very passionate about making a difference in New Zealand. We're very passionate about how innovation can be applied and how technology can be applied to make a difference. And so hopefully she will bring some ideas. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much for that. Kia ora. Thank you for having me along today. I believe I have 45 minutes, so I was thinking maybe 25, 30 minutes of just sharing some content with you and then a good 15, 20 minutes of discussing it. I don't have the answers. I have a range of challenges and hopefully stimulating thoughts for you to get you thinking a little bit differently about the next 20 years. I am incredibly passionate about New Zealand. Anyone who gives up their job in private sector to run for mayor, I think, is pretty passionate about getting our country on the right track. And it's been wonderful in Callaghan Innovation to have the opportunity to be at the front of where technology is going and then helping our businesses and different parts of the ecosystem across New Zealand get more on the front foot. I'm not going to talk much about what Callaghan Innovation does. I am happy to do that in questions and answers. Where I am going to start, though, is helping us look out to 2040. We're very short term as a world. That's the one thing I love about our Maori culture, is that they think in 50, 100, 200-year cycles. And for much of our industry in New Zealand, we should be thinking much further out than we are. So we're going to start with 2040. It's around 20 or so years out. We've done a lot of work in Callaghan Innovation around what does the world look like in 2040? And so we've come up with 8 global megatrends that are driving the world to a slightly different place, or one that will feel a bit different for us in New Zealand in 20 or so years' time. So the 8 trends, the big ones for us are the shift in the geopolitical power or the changing world order. Obviously, climate change is a big one that there's a lot of conversations and activities happening around, and you had a session on that yesterday. Changing demographics is a big one. The future of work is huge. I'm going to talk a little bit about that to make sure that you're thinking about that, and the ethical empowered consumer. So in terms of the changing geopolitical order, if you go out to 2040, the top 7 economic powers in the world look like China at number 1, India with the US at number 2, Brazil, Russia, Mexico and Indonesia rounding out the rest of the 7. So who drops out? UK, Germany, Japan, France. That's a very different world that we will be trading in 20 or so years' time. There are a load of opportunities for us in terms of where we're positioned in the world, physically and also politically, to take advantage of that shift. The great news is that 250 million middle-class consumers throughout China and India over the next 10 or so years. So lots of opportunities for our products and services in that environment, but a very, very uncertain geopolitical environment because they don't typically operate like Western economies in the way that we do. So there's a lot of work for us as a country to get ourselves prepared for that, not just at a government level, but at a industry and business level. So that's a huge one for me. Climate change, 180 million climate refugees by the time we hit 2040. People looking for new homes due to rising sea temperatures, rising temperatures in the world, all sorts of issues. Australia will be a big beneficiary, you could call it that, they may not call it that, of climate change refugees coming through into there. So again, that provides a bit of an opportunity for us to think about how are we thinking about it. Future of work, I'm not going to talk about that because I've got some slides in there. Changing demographics, 9 billion people on the planet. How we feed ourselves, how we live sustainably is really where a lot of the climate change and alternative protein is coming in. But the big one for New Zealand is, as you go through the next couple of decades, the number of New Zealanders 65 plus will double. The working age population for New Zealand increases by 10%. So how the heck, as a country, we're going to sustain an ageing population with a decreasing workforce is a really, really large challenge for us. So these are things that we think about at Callaghan Innovation. We absolutely encourage industry to be thinking about this. You know, we know that our world is changing faster than ever, and make sure you're not just thinking about the technology you're bringing to it, the role that you're playing in your bit, but how this fits in a collective bigger picture for New Zealand. As many of you know, we've been through a few revolutions as a world before, and we are sitting right, well, at the start, a few years in, however you want to position it, of the fourth industrial internet revolution. And essentially, many of you know what all this is about. It is simply where internet, sensors, real-time, big data collide together to enable us to operate quite differently to how we have been operating. The thing that we see, we're not alone, you know, the OECD, World Economic Forum, all of them believe that every single industry in the world will be impacted by this. So it's not as though this is just going to happen to one place. It's happening everywhere. And what we encourage people to be doing is be thinking about, how are you thinking about your industry? Are you thinking about it as healthcare? Or are you thinking about it in terms of the opportunities that will be provided in the coming decades around precision medicine, you know, precision nutrition, digital health, things like that? Automotive is shifting to intelligent transport systems. Manufacturing is Industry 4, you know, advanced manufacturing. Utilities is heading to smart grid, smart building systems, smart energy management. So we would, even if you don't quite understand it, we would be encouraging you to be talking in a different language to take you on the journey of where this technology is taking us. So many of you would have, I don't know if you've seen, did you see the announcement that Melbourne is going to be one of the first cities off the rank to host Uber's flying vehicles? Yeah, so a great example of the industrial internet revolution, a whole pile of sensors, cameras, in real time, big data manipulating and controlling, vehicles, whether that's autonomous vehicles as we drive or vehicles as we fly, and looking to commercial launch of that globally for 2023. So this stuff is getting closer and closer and closer to hitting us, I guess. I do want to cover just really quickly some of the technologies that are coming through. I'm assuming, given what you do, that you are very familiar with some, if not many, of these technologies. Can I just get a show of hand for some things? Does anyone have robot vacuum cleaners? Go. Oh, this is exciting. Usually there's one. Awesome. This is an advanced, mature audience. Does anyone have a robot lawnmower? Oh, no, you need to go get one. So actually, to be fair, I just got one for my dad, who's 83. They have a 1,500 square metre section, and he's getting a bit depressed by mowing the lawns. So Sebastian, I noticed that everybody names their robots. Sebastian now mows his lawns every week. He's just delighted. He's the talk of the neighbourhood. And Sebastian, much to my delight, because I got him installed and paid for it, is still going a year on with no problems. What about 3D printers? Must be a few of those around. Yep. Okay, all good. Anyone playing with drones? Cool. Okay, this is actually not too bad. I mean, ideally we wanted a bit more. And the purpose of why I kind of bring this up is because actually we know that if we play with technology in our home life first, we adopt it faster into our home and our personal life than we do into our businesses. I don't know why it is, it just is what it is. But finding excuses, I mean, you know, if you've got children, buy them drones, buy them 3D printers, let them play with it, see how they use it. You know, Father's Day is a great opportunity to get some of these toys, Christmas, into your home so that you actually can start to learn and understand. So my parents, as I said, 76 and 83, so Sebastian mows the lawn. Oh my God, there's another one, starts with S, that mops the floors now. We've got a floor mopper, and we've got the vacuum cleaner, I forgot his name as well, they're all he's, which is interesting in itself, isn't it? And the next one on the list is the window cleaners, because they like to have clean windows. They're getting a little old to do it, so when I'm up in the States next, I've got a robot window cleaner coming. So there's all sorts of applications for this technology, is my point. There's a lot of it coming. It's not like there's just one or two. You know, if you think about the last 20, 30 years, there's been a lot of technology, but in comparison to what we've got coming, it's not even close. So the level of change that's going to come through is going to be huge. The dilemma that we have in New Zealand is research and development. We live it every day at Callaghan Innovation with the government's goal to lift our level of R&D in New Zealand. Essentially, for me, we are miles behind most of the rest of the OECD. We are catching up super fast, actually, which is really good. We're seeing an accelerated effort by business to do more of this. Essentially, R&D is just the application of those technologies into your business. It's playing with them to understand what improvements can you make to your products and services, what new products and services can you bring in, how can you improve your processes through technologies that drive efficiency. It's also things like how can you change your business models as well. So it's not just about products and services, it is also about your business model of how you operate moving forward. So the dilemma that we have in New Zealand is that we're a bit behind the world in terms of applying these new technologies into our organisations. The organisations that we work with that are doing R&D, we know have 4 times the revenue growth and 4 times the job growth of companies that we don't work with who aren't doing as high levels of R&D. So there is a link between, as you deploy these technologies, as you learn about them, you are able to create new revenue streams, improve new revenue streams, create jobs that go along with it, etc. So the goal for our country is to get us to 2%. That essentially means that businesses will double their investment in R&D over the next decade or so. One of the big challenges that comes with that is there's lots of upside, but the skills required to do that, there is a shortage of skills in these technical areas to do it. So we might talk about it a little bit about that later. The other big challenge we have as a country, along with low R&D, we've got a really sustaining labour productivity issue in New Zealand. The other big one is the curse of the domestic focus market. We do know, this essentially just says, if you've got foreign investment, or you are part of an international, so a multinational, then you will automatically have a better path to new product innovation, more R&D activity, better marketing innovation, better process innovation, and better organisational innovation. And that is essentially just simply because you are better connected into where the rest of the world is going. It is unfortunately in many places moving faster than we are as a country. So being connected into that, being connected into the markets, the local market knowledge, being connected into the networks, automatically positions you to have a better chance than a business that is just focused in New Zealand and owned by New Zealanders. Unfortunately, that's just the reality of it. And in some instances, you see that playing up in our domestic markets through a real lack of innovation because we're all insularly focused. We're not competing on the world stage, and so some of that innovation isn't coming through as fast because it simply doesn't need to. Whereas when you're competing in markets around the world, you have to keep up. So that's something we absolutely need to watch out for. It's great to have New Zealand businesses here. It's even better to have them selling on the world stage and connected into the pace of the world stage. So for me, though, the technology is interesting, and I can kind of talk about it. You guys will be way more experts in it than I am, and I've got a couple of hundred of scientists and engineers in Callaghan Innovation who are absolute experts in their areas and contributing in these ways. For me, though, it is also about what that technology does to the rest of our lives, to our businesses, and so that's where I want to spend the rest of the few minutes, 10, 15 minutes or so that I have to have a wee chat with you. And so for me, the big impacts of technology go into our people, and future of work is the key issue that's coming up there. They go into our leadership skills. We can't lead through the next 20 years in the same way we've led in the last 10, 15 years. So there's some real demands coming on us as leaders that technology is pressuring and changing. And our business models, how we've competed in the past, again needs to change for how we survive and thrive in a new world where innovation and technology will be coming through on a regular basis. So let's start with our people. So McKinsey's done some work, and in fact the Prime Minister's Advisory Group have just released, went to a breakfast last week, some more work on the future of work and pledges that organisations can sign up to ensure that you are thinking about the impacts of technology change onto your workforces. What we do know is that around 41% of our activities in New Zealand industry have the potential to be automated. That doesn't mean 41% of roles, it means the activities that we are doing. We know that it will affect around 1 million people and around 5 billion of wages in New Zealand. Obviously, as you go into Australia, the effects get bigger, but it's similar. The two countries are a little bit similar. The types of activities that will be automated, as you know, is the predictable, the physical, so the taxi drivers, the repetitive task work that machines can do much better than we can, and the things that won't be as able to be automated are actually the jobs I think that probably a lot of you do in this room, and I do, which is the management, where there's complex judgment involved, where you have like scientific expertise, etc. Those things are less able to be automated. So that's both good and bad depending on where you sit. At the end of the day, though, what it means is that there's a phenomenal impact of this into our society, and even if we're not impacted, I believe you have an obligation to understand this and manage this through your organisations so that those who are impacted have the best chance possible of continuing to have a good, healthy, prosperous life rather than be stranded. And at the moment, we're not setting ourselves up to be in that position. So if you look at who is going to be impacted, it's those who don't have qualifications, it's those who have some high school qualification or experience. As you get a degree, you're far less likely to be impacted through this next round of technology change and automation that's coming through. What that means is a significant impact on our economy, depending on where it goes. There is absolutely the belief that roles will be replaced. We will create new jobs from the technology changes and the new work that's coming through. The biggest question is, when will that happen? And will it happen in synchronicity? So, an activity goes out, an activity comes in, or will there be a delay between the activity going out, businesses understanding technology, applying it, and then the new jobs and new activities coming in? And so this page, this graph, chart just gives you a view of the different scenarios around that. And if you look at some of the scenarios around low or medium redeployment, so the roles will be replaced, there's some pretty big humps for us to get through, and the numbers for that look pretty scary. So that's like 3 to 4 times the welfare payments we are paying out now if we don't get enough jobs coming through fast enough for activities to be automated. So what we would be saying is that your organisations, for those leaders, managers in the room, for the industry leaders in the room, you must be thinking about this now. New Zealand, and we are not alone, has a very poor track record in the OECD of reinvesting in our people, particularly in the business environment. And the pledge from the Prime Minister's Advisory Group is all about changing that. It's about you making a commitment to understanding how technology will change your roles and your workforces, and you also making a commitment to help reskill people in order to help them transition through that change. So for us, this is really big stuff. We would hate to see the country get into a position where we are stranded and we aren't on the front foot on this. Because the impacts of that look pretty ugly, not just for those who can't access this economy, but even for middle class whose jobs are changing under them as they speak and can't immediately redeploy into the new roles in the economy. So that's something for you to have a think about. The other one comes down to leaders. So not just are our people affected by the technology and change coming through in the fourth industrial revolution, but we as leaders are. And essentially what's being demanded of us as leaders is a hell of a lot. And you can search Google for any model around leadership in the fourth industrial internet revolution. You'll get lots of different things. There's some great articles, some great material around there for you to have a look at. But the sorts of things that are coming through is new skills like entrepreneurial intelligence. We haven't always had to be nimble and fast. We are having to be more nimble and fast than 20 years ago. But you can imagine with that much technology change coming through and being deployed at scale, how quickly you're going to have to think about trying things, being agile, failing and pivoting. Not just in one or two areas, but in many areas across your business. The other one is around transdisciplinary intelligence. So I'm sure you will be noticing, as many in the science world are noticing, that when you put multidisciplines of science and you bring engineering into that, So physicists, chemists, coders, computer science, engineers, that we are able to solve problems that we've never been able to solve before. And I was up at Stanford a couple of months ago with the CRI CEOs looking at some of their programs up there, and Stanford X run specific multidisciplinary collaborations, and they publish on their website all the problems that they are funding and solving, and it's unbelievable the world's problems that they are solving through bringing these different disciplines together. It's been happening for a while already, but it's going to happen more on steroids. So how you navigate and lead through that is quite different than just managing in silos disciplines, which is what we've done in the past. Ecosystem intelligence, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So no longer, you won't survive through this change by just living on your own and competing on your own. We're already starting to move to a more partnership, collaboration business model. Definitely a platform business model. If you can jump your business into a platform, you automatically get a massive step forward. Xero is a great example of one of the only New Zealand companies in the SaaS space to be able to create a global platform that's attracted 600, 700, 800 businesses to be part of it. So that model is the model of the future. And the last one that is worth mentioning is ethical intelligence. And with 2 billion people connected on social media, I'm just going to preface this, I don't necessarily agree with this, it is what it is. With 2 billion people connected, our societal values are being questioned, challenged, and changed at a rate of knots that we've never seen before. So even what I could say as a female in leadership 5 years ago, I can't say anymore, and definitely for some of the guys out there, you absolutely cannot say it. So being savvy to those shifts and those changes, because occasionally if you get caught out and there's an agenda against you, you'll be hung out to dry. Personally, I think that's really unfair, but that is the world that we are operating in, and you need to be seriously in tune with that as a leader. So some really interesting shifts in the leadership space that we would just be encouraging, again, that you are thinking about, that you are training your people in, rather than ignoring it. One of the big challenges with New Zealand is how you pick your partners to go through this journey. And we do know, unfortunately, they're a little more sophisticated in Australia, and up into Asia, they're a big step above again. In New Zealand, we're not embracing technology at a SME level. In a way, that means you can turn to the market and pick a whole lot of partners to take you on this journey. So when you talk to SMEs about what's the big technology change coming for their business in the next decade, most of them say broadband connectivity, which is great for last decade. That's, and we have done a phenomenal job in New Zealand. There are many countries, particularly Australia, totally jealous of our fibre network. So yes, broadband connectivity is a big step forwards, but it's what you are now able to do over that fibre that will make our country accelerate. And unfortunately, we're not seeing enough of our SME sector picking up the what I do on top, which is using things like big data, 3D printing, automation, sensors, etc., etc. So we would say pick your partners very carefully. And I think there's some work in government going on how do we accelerate our SMEs' adoption of technology so that they are better partners for our New Zealand businesses. The next one for me is around platforms. So this comes to your business model, and this is changing rapidly. This is an example of the agri-tech ecosystem in Israel. So I was up there about 18 months ago and came across a tool organisation called Startup Nation, and they provide an online platform that maps the Israeli innovation ecosystem, and it enables the ecosystem to see where all the startups, the ideas are, where the investment's going, where the partnerships are emerging, which corporates, which multinationals are playing, and in which parts of the sector. And because of real-time information, because of the proliferation of sensors, we now have different parts of the ecosystem or agri-tech ecosystem that are able to talk together in ways that they simply weren't able to 5 or 10 years ago. So understanding the ecosystem that you're operating in and how you connect into that, and where investment's going, how that's changing, developing, who's playing, that comes to that entrepreneurial ecosystem intelligence I talked about a few slides ago. So that is a bit of a shift. What we are doing, though, to help that shift is we've basically licensed the Israeli startup platform. We've launched it into New Zealand in April. I think we've got around 800-900 companies on it so far. And it's completely free to you, and it's a platform that collects where is the innovation in Where is the technology innovation happening in the country? So what we will play out for you is the innovative startups. So you can look at that. There's 2,000 tags in the system, and that's tagged by technology, by sector, by geography, sorts of things like that, by stage of company. So you are able to see where these startups are playing and what technologies they're playing. It will also enable you to find investors that are active in that startups technology system in New Zealand. And even if you're an international investor investing in New Zealand companies, you will be on this platform. So we'll be able to compare what is the level of investment in 3D printing, 4D printing, and AI and sensors, whatever it is, whatever technology we want to be able to see. We'll be able to track the investment in our New Zealand startups versus Israel and versus Ireland as well, because they've got it. And also we're looking at trying to get it into Australia. So we'll be able to benchmark and measure the growth of our innovation ecosystem in New Zealand. And then the other area that you'll be able to find is hubs. So hubs that are accelerating commercialisation of ideas. So accelerators, incubators, things like that. And that's hubs that are generally out there, or hubs that are related to multinationals wanting to find ideas and push acceleration through. So that's the whole platform concept, and so Scale Up New Zealand is there to help you through that and provide much more visibility of that. The great thing about New Zealand is we're small and we're connected, but all those connections are in our heads, and the idea is to get it out our heads into a platform that all of New Zealand can see, and of course expose our ideas to the world stage. The last one that I just want to mention is that boards play a critical role. So it's not just us as leaders, it's not just us as employees and staff. Our boards play a massive role over the next 20 years in successful evolution of our organisations through all of these changes. So the IOD, Institute of Directors, did some work about 18 months ago around, so are boards prepared for this? And basically the answer is generally no. So only 35% of boards say they have the right skills and experience to lead through this digital technology revolution. Only 28% don't think they have the right capability in their organisation, and nearly 40% don't know. So basically, what's that, 46, 70? 30% think they do. It's a pretty sad state of things. 47% of boards say they receive good quality information. So if you're reporting into boards, I'd really be thinking about what information are you giving them, because they don't understand the future and they're relying on you to help them do that. 23% of boards actively participate in cybersecurity policy, which is therefore not ironic that 93% of cybersecurity breaches could have been avoided if you'd had that governance layer over it and boards knew more of what they were doing in that space. So we've got some ideas around how you can sort that if you are an organisation that has a board and you are challenged in that space, or perhaps your board doesn't have the right skills, can't quite see the future. So the sorts of ways that we think that you can help your board get through this is obviously upskilling. There's programs, Tech Futures, there's IOD courses that are available on different technologies. If you're big enough, board trips, getting them offshore is one of the best ways you can get them exposed to the pace of change. Risk, boards love risk, and why health and safety has been so successful, apart from regulation pushing it through, is the risk lens. So if you are able to say that the future of your business, which it is at risk, if you continue to operate the same, offer the same products and services, blah, 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 then your business will not survive, let alone thrive, through the next 2 decades. So there is a hell of a lot of risk, reputation, financial, to your staff, to your engagement as we go through this change. So that's also a good lens to bring in. Building organisational capability. So doing that right through board exec, through that management layer, and then, some organisations thinking about subcommittees. This is really important. This is really big. It will have as big an impact as health and safety has through the next 2 decades, so it might be worth thinking about how you're organising your board around that. So that's it for me. I just leave a few questions. You can have this presentation if it's useful. And so the questions for me really are around, are you actively planning your workforce and your transition through this next kind of 10 years and these big changes of AI, big data, et cetera, et cetera? Are you investing in preparing your leaders? If you are a leader, are you investing in yourself to get you through this next phase? Have you mapped your current and future ecosystems of how you operate, how that's changing, so you know where you need to be playing, where you need to be competing, where where you need to be purchasing, things like that. How are you talking about what you do in yesterday's language or in the future language? How are the global sectors? What opportunities do they bring you? These megatrends. There's some amazing opportunities, not just for our country, but for industry in some of those changes. Pretty scary at times, but amazing. What level of R&D are you undertaking? And so are you applying? Are you creating new products and services? Are you evolving them? Are you doing process efficiency, et cetera, et cetera? And what we do also know is that if you're innovating simultaneously products and services, process innovation, and organisational model innovation, then your level of success you will have far outstrips just doing one type of innovation. So that's it for me. Hopefully that was useful. So I think what we're going to do is open it up to some questions. Is that right? Yeah. So, any questions? Or, I mean, you can disagree with all of it. I won't take it personally.
Very good. Who's got some questions?
One over here.
Hi, Dyson Gentle Powernet. Just wondering how confident you are that new roles will grow to replace the old ones. Is that, I assume, a bit more than optimism?
Well, the latest work shows we should be confident. I'm not yet confident though. I'm quite worried. I'm in the worried stage about that still, and that's because of a couple of reasons. One, as I go around having a lot of these conversations, I'm not seeing enough organisations understanding the impact and actually starting to plan for that. So we're developing a future workforce strategy in Callaghan Innovation so we can provide that out as an exemplar to other organisations, at least of how you might go through that process. And then two, I'm worried that we're not retraining and upskilling our workforces fast enough. So those numbers aren't shifting. So the view is that they will be there. My concern is that we're not doing enough now to make sure they're there in time. Yeah. And that's all of our responsibility. So it's not I was at a session about it 3 weeks ago and people were saying, well, what are you doing about it? And I'm like, well, I'm doing what I can, but it's actually up to the leaders in our country. Leaders, government, yes, industry leaders, organisational leaders to be really taking up the mantle on that. And the big issue, of course, is skills. And so there is a disconnect between what our universities are spitting out. It's a bit rude to put it like that, isn't it? What our universities are culturing and fostering, and the roles that we need. In terms of the new ones coming through, what we do know is that 55% of STEM skills in the world are coming from China and India. So I would, for critical roles, I would absolutely be going global on if we can't get the skill here, you have to go and find it, and it's in demand, so go get it fast before everyone else does.
Good question, Dyson. Who else has a question?
Great presentation, thanks. Sean is my name. My question is around the schools. So this is really good, and we've got a whole lot of school students coming through. How are we getting into the schools in this sort of information?
How are they, or? Sorry,
How are the schools changing to provide better skills for our younger students to enter this new world?
Yeah. So also, I'll share with what I'm hearing in that space. So we are seeing at school level more coding, more robotics programs coming through, etc. So we're seeing that coming through earlier in schools, but it's a little bit late for us to be doing that, in my personal opinion. But it's coming through. Then into universities, what I'm hearing is that the graduates that are coming out don't necessarily have the right skills. And that could be the technical skills or enough, I'm going to call it commercial understanding to make impact straight away when they come out into workforces. So the sorts of things that we are doing about that is that we have the student grants, which is funding that we give businesses to help with that, getting some of those skills, getting some of those new ideas, because students do think quite differently than 40, 50-year-olds, including myself. So getting that into your workforce in a way that's affordable, yes, there's some training and some frustration that goes with they're not quite ready, but once they've been through that student grant process, that they are much more employable. Moving forward and are adding much more value. We are certainly championing back into government that we think there is a disconnect between what the skills are needed in industry and in the tertiary education sector. all we can do is champion that back in. I just hope somewhere soon, whether it's through the Future of Work or some other program, that conversation gets a lot more legs so that universities can really understand where industry is going and the skills that industry needs. So we know when we talk to our businesses, our recent survey shows that getting the right technical skills to build products is the hardest challenge for business. It's harder than finding capital.
Question at the front here.
My name is Marshall Clark. My question is about participation of young women in engineering. Electrical engineering, I am ashamed to say, has the lowest rate of participation of women at university level. My daughter, I'm proud to say, has gone on to do engineering, but that's classic because she could understand what engineering was about because I could talk to her about it. We are missing out on so much talent. My perception is that schools have still no idea at all about what engineering and technology is about in the real workforce. What's your diagnosis and what's your prescription?
So, I mean, I agree with you. And so my daughter is second year mechanical engineering and 3 of her friends are there as well. So I'm doing my best to get them into the system. My observations are, I think schools are waking up. That's my observation, is they really are waking up. One of the challenges I see is actually the parents. It's the for a lot of my daughter's friends, their parents are encouraging the girls into law, into accountancy, into medicine. So they see those as great careers, but they are great careers, but like 20 years ago. And many of those careers are going to be severely impacted by automation, albeit it might take 20 years, but they will be impacted. So for me, I think schools are catching up. I think parents aren't. I mean, unless you're in it and you're role modelling it for your daughter, which unfortunately there's not enough of us doing it. So I think dads have a really big role to play to not pigeon their daughters into certain areas. And then I think about my daughter's journey, or even my journey through tech and innovation, because I think it was only really 6 years ago I was in my first management team with another woman. It is that the culture and the environment needs to be a little more accepting. You know, we're different men and women. You know, my daughter, she's in the SAEI, the Formula race car, you know, they make that thing, which sounds lots of fun. And she does rock up sometimes, full makeup, high heel boots, you know, but she can contribute really well. So just, you know, so it's like she's not always accepted for who she is because they're like, oh my God, that's not what like a mechanical engineer looks like. They never wear makeup. So it's about also just slightly some changes in the environment to make it a little more friendly and a little more accepting of difference, I think. Yeah. So my diagnosis is there's some movement, we're not going fast enough. My prescription is that parents are a major part of the problem and we need to shake them to wake them up. So if you're in groups where your children, their parents are recommending it and you've got good relationships, you've got to get in there and start educating them. They're at fault as much as the schools are. And then how you as in all the men in the room, make it it needs to be a slightly different environment for us to thrive. Yeah.
Good response. For all you mechanical engineers out there, don't hold yourself back. You can get your makeup out now. I saw a question mid-side over here, please.
Good afternoon. Nicolas Vessio from Palco. You showed us the level of investments in R&D innovation being quite low in New Zealand. Specifically with the sector, do you have comments to do on the level of investment?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of the sectors that are really low is the energy sector. That's, so 8-9 million last time I looked. Yeah, there's some government funding that goes in, but that's not playing through to commercialisation of a lot of that research into your businesses to add value. So that's pretty low. We're pretty frustrated with manufacturing. We would love that to be a lot higher than it is. In the digital space, there's a hell of a lot happening there in regards to some of the technologies heading into healthcare, medical technology, things like that. So when you dig underneath the data, there are some industries that are really starting to fly and grow, and then there are others like energy and manufacturing that are, we're not seeing the movement. So we're doing some thinking about, particularly in advanced manufacturing, of, how do we partner up better with industry to be supporting that, enabling that, and driving that future. Because I think that's a major issue for us. We know we've got Germany, announcing billions in artificial intelligence and automation and stuff like that. It's going to be increasingly hard for us to compete on a world stage when we don't have either the new products or the cost efficiencies of some of these technologies. Yeah.
Excellent. I'm going to call time there, just so we can stick to time. But before Vic leaves the stage, can I ask Jeff Douch just to come up and propose a vote of thanks?
And thank you so much for your time.
Vic, thank you very much for that very insightful presentation and giving us your views on the future, the mega trends, the transformation that we're likely to see. It certainly gives us a lot of challenges and opportunities. And I think as engineers and managers and leaders, we need to be aware of that and embrace it and take those on board. So thank you very much. And on behalf of the EEA and everyone here, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Cheers.
Good luck.